Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Congressman Stephen Horsford, representing Nevada's 4th Congressional District, and I'm pleased to be here with several of my colleagues from Nevada, and along with our friend Saru and the workers from One Fair Wage, and people all across the country who know all too well that a tip is a gift. It's not a guarantee.
That's right.
It's not something that service employees can bank on, and it's not something that should be taxed. Right now, people who survive on tips, like the people you see standing here today, are truly just surviving off of them. That's because in far too many places across this country, employers can get away with paying just $2.13 an hour. $2.13. That's literally shameful. And we have the nerve to also tax their tips. Forget about saving for the future, or trying to help your child get ahead in life, or even affording the basics like putting food on the table. They're just surviving. Meanwhile, Republicans just rolled out their Screw Americans bill to add $4.5 trillion to the deficit.
Boo.
And to give more tax breaks to big corporations, to tech tycoons, and to billionaires.
Boo.
It's time we take a good, hard look at what Republican policies are actually doing for working people. I'll tell you, they're ripping you off.
That's right.
A couple of weeks ago, President Trump came to my district, to Las Vegas, to talk about taxes on tips. But with Trump, there's always a catch. The difference between my bill, the TIPS Act, and the Trump concept of a bill is that my bill actually protects workers.
That's right.
Trump's concept would solidify a loophole, allowing the rich to gift their fortunes to their kids and to call the inheritance a tip. That's a ripoff.
That's a ripoff.
And it gets worse. His concept would have actual tipped workers withholding contributions from their Social Security retirement funds.
That's not right.
So while he's helping the rich, he's literally harming the working poor.
That's right.
That's a ripoff. My bill defines what a tipped worker is. It's the people standing with me. It's the people back home in Las Vegas, the local Culinary 226, who staff our hotels and casinos, and other hard-working restaurant and hospitality workers across the country. Trump's policy helps hedge fund managers. Say it with me. That's a ripoff.
That's a ripoff.
My bill provides an income cap to prevent the tax loophole for the ultra-rich. Trump's concept of a plan creates loopholes large enough to drive a Mack truck through. So the choice is clear. Support my bill, which eliminates the sub-minimum wage.
That's right. Woo!
It ensures the rich pay their fair share, and it helps hard-working tipped workers keep more of their hard-earned money in their pockets.
Right.
Or Trump's version, which is nothing more than a ripoff.
That's right.
Today we stand with the workers, and we call on Republicans and Democrats serious about lowering taxes to sign on to the TIPS Act. Sign on to the TIPS Act. Reject the Trump Republican ripoff. Support the working people standing here today, the people serving meals and cleaning homes. And recognize that you can't have one without the other.
That's right.
It's not enough to end taxes on tips. It's also about ending the sub-minimum wage and giving working people the power to keep more of their hard-earned money. My bill does that, and it's the only one that does. And with that, I want to pass it over to Saru from One Fair Wage. And again, thank you for your tremendous work across the country on this effort.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We are so excited to be here today because the election was so clear. Voters were so clear. Every exit poll was so clear that the top issue for the overwhelming majority of working people in America is the cost of living and their ability to survive and feed their families right now. And so I do want to first recognize the people standing with me. We are a national organization, One Fair Wage, of 300,000 restaurant workers in all 50 states and 1,000 restaurant owners standing together to raise wages for all workers and end all sub-minimum wages in the United States of America. And today we have incredible worker leaders who've come from Illinois, from New Jersey, from Florida, from Virginia, from Georgia, from Massachusetts, from Colorado, from New York, from the great state of Maryland next door. And of course, we could never not recognize the leadership and incredible pioneering nature of the incredible state of Nevada. Already has one fair wage, a full minimum wage with tips on top. I also want to thank and recognize the partners that are here with us today, the Amalgamated Transit Union, Tax Fairness partners who've been working on stopping tax cuts for corporations and billionaires, and the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Look, the restaurant industry has been one of the largest and fastest growing private sector employers in the United States for decades. 14 million workers, largest employer of women, people of color, immigrants, youth, but it is the absolute lowest paying employer and has been for generations, dating back to emancipation when the wage structure was created. Prior to emancipation, waiters in the U.S. were white men who did not get tips. They got wages, actual wages, and they went on strike for higher wages. In 1853, the restaurant industry started looking for cheaper labor, so after emancipation, they started hiring newly freed black people, black women in particular, and telling them, you're not going to get any wage. You're going to get this new thing we call a tip. It's come from Europe. Well, in Europe, tips were used as an extra or a bonus, a gratuity or a gift. As the Congress member said, not a replacement for wages, but in the United States, because of our ugly history of slavery, this was a way to allow restaurants to have free black labor, not pay them after chattel slavery ended, and have them rely exclusively on tips. And we went from $0 in 1865 to the extremely shameful $2.13 an hour in 2025. Today, these workers are still overwhelmingly women of color, highest rates of single mothers of any occupation, mostly single moms working in very casual restaurants and diners, IHOP and Denny's and Applebee's, struggling with 3 times the poverty rate of other workers and experiencing the absolute highest rates of sexual harassment of any industry because they have to put up with so much from customers to get those tips. That ain't right.
That's right.
Thankfully, change is on the way. With the pandemic, so many of these workers said enough is enough. Tips have gone down. Harassment has gone up. We're leaving. 1.2 million workers left the industry, and wages have started to go up because employers have started to realize nobody wants to work for $2 and $3 anymore.
That's right.
And so we are winning. We won here in Washington, D.C., one fair wage. We won in Flagstaff, Arizona. We won in Chicago, and some of those folks are here with us. We're about to win in Illinois. We just won the great state of Michigan. Michigan just became the 8th state following Nevada and California and Oregon and Washington, Minnesota and Montana and Alaska, requiring a full minimum wage with tips on top. Michigan, the first state east of the Mississippi, and Illinois is about to follow any day now. That's why we got people here from Illinois. In the meantime, though, it's so important to understand when you've got a population of 14 million workers who've been excluded from minimum wage increases over and over and over again for decades, and then you have a man come along and say, oh, no taxes on tips. It's not the right solution. 2/3 of tipped workers don't even earn enough to pay federal income tax.
That's so true. That's true.
But it did make them feel visibilized. And so that is why we're so grateful to Congressmember Horsford for having the leadership and the vision to say, yes, we see you, and we know what you need is not a tax cut. Certainly we don't need tax cuts for billionaires. What we need is a raise, and we need it now. We've needed it for a very long time, 150 years to be precise. And thanks to Congressmember Horsford, since introduction of the TIPS Act, we are seeing incredible momentum in Maryland, where this bill is moving, and in Illinois, where this bill is about to pass. And so we need to deliver for these workers now. Every state should follow the lead of Congressmember Horsford. Every Congressmember and every state should follow the lead of Congressmember Horsford, because the last thing I want to say is 14 million workers is a hell of a lot of voters. You ignore these workers, you leave them out of minimum wage increases at your peril, which is why let us speak to them now and say, we see you, we hear you, we know what tipped workers need. They need a raise, we need one fair wage. We don't need no Trump tax on tips, which leaves out 2/3 of workers. We need a wage for all. Today, the day before Valentine's, the highest grossing day in the restaurant industry, when so many workers are serving our loved ones and can't be with their loved ones. Let's love our servers and do one fair wage. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Saru, and all of the hard work of One Fair Wage, and congratulations on the success at the local and state level. And one of the champions that have moved this legislation forward at the state level before coming to Congress. She represents the Las Vegas Strip in District 1, Congresswoman Dina Titus.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here, especially you who came from Florida. This is not what you're used to, right? I need to get one of those hats. Aren't those great hats? One fair wage, and along with one fair wage, one job should be enough. And if you can't have that with the way the tip system works today. You know, Donald Trump said a lot of things during his campaign. He was going to take away taxes on tips. He was going to bring down the price of eggs. He was going to end the war in Ukraine all on day one. Well, he hadn't done any of that. And so why would we believe him when he goes out to my district in Las Vegas to say, oh, I'm with you, serve me now, but I'll serve you later. Well, the devil's in the details, as you can see here. I want to congratulate and praise Stephen Horsford for his leadership on this issue. He's worked with Culinary 226 much of his adult life. He knows what it's like on those front lines, and he has taken the lead, and we are all indebted to him for doing that. Nevada is a state that doesn't have that sub-minimal wage. 1 of 8. I thought it was 7, but now y'all won Michigan. That's great. And over 1 million workers, though, make less than the federal level, a little more than the sub-minimal, but under that amount, you cannot feed your children, you cannot pay your rent, you cannot go to the doctor if you are making $2 an hour, $2 whatever an hour. And you don't always get tips. You heard how you have to put up with some of these people. How many of you have seen people with very bad behavior in restaurants, very demanding, sending things back, harassing the waiter, blaming the waiter if something goes wrong in the kitchen, or if the management has a policy that they're just doing their job? So you can't count on those tips. You can't build a future based on what you think you might get in tips. That's why those should be considered on top of and not part of what you tax. So I'm pleased to support this bill. We got to get rid of that sub-minimal wage. Do like Nevada has done. Raise the minimum wage for everybody. Everybody needs a higher wage. And so you can count on my support. We've stood with workers in Nevada. We'll do them here. And thank you all so much for being such a powerful and eloquent voice for our hospitality workers. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Another champion from Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. We work in collaboration together, making sure that all the needs of workers are uplifted. From the 3rd Congressional District, Congresswoman Susie Lee.
All right, thank you. Well, let's give it up for these men and women who stand behind me representing the millions of Americans who are not getting paid enough. The bottom line is that for too long, working families across this country have been screwed. Big corporations are making record profits while middle-class families continue to struggle. I know that Trump jumped on this no tax on tips bandwagon, but that was long after Nevadans had been fighting for it for years. led by Stephen Horsford and Dina Titus. And frankly, this is something he could have done in his first term.
That's right.
But he didn't do it. We've been fighting also to make sure that one job should be enough, and we should all be earning one fair wage. No one should lose out on the tips that they earn, and this bill is written in a way to make sure that big corporations and ultra wealthy cannot use it as a loophole to continue to avoid paying taxes. Stephen, thank you for your leadership. You've always been fighting for working families in Congress. I want to thank the Culinary 226 and One for Fair Wage for being here today. Listen, this is about not just a slogan. The Trump administration and Donald Trump's real good at using slogans, but this is about policy that really will change people's lives. And that's really what we're serious about. And so I implore my Republicans to sign on to this bill if they're really serious about standing up for the millions of working families across this country who have been struggling to make ends meet. And I'm just going to point out, we're introducing this bill a day after Republicans unveiled a budget that will add $4 trillion to the debt, will lead to cuts in Medicaid, lead to cuts in Medicare, lead to cuts in Social Security. This administration has not done one damn thing to make life more affordable for Americans, but continues to march down that path that rewards big corporations and the ultra wealthy. Well, enough is enough. We're here to stand up with these men and women who represent working families across this country who have been struggling to put food on their table, to pay their rent, to pay for their health care. And we're going to continue to fight to make sure that one wage is enough, that we have one fair wage, and that tips do not get taxed. Thank you all for being here.
Two phenomenal champions. Thank you for signing on for this legislation as we continue to build support. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez and Congresswoman LaMonica McIver.
Well, good morning. Is it still morning? Yeah. It's been a long day, so it's hard to know. It is so good to be with all of you today, and it's so good to be with our Nevada delegation that is holding it down for working families here. With Steve, with Susie, with Dina, and with LaMonica here also representing Jersey. Folks, my name is Delia Catalina Ramirez. I get to represent the beautiful city of Chicago that's actually, I think, snowier than here right now. And I represent the 3rd Congressional District. As a proud daughter of immigrants who've worked minimum wage jobs their entire lives, they work long hours. I know what it was like and the sacrifice and the impact it had on our family. It meant that they couldn't afford childcare. It meant that one had to work the first shift, the other had to work the second shift so that they could alternate to make sure that someone was home because they couldn't afford childcare, because they had to make sure that they can put a roof over our head. In 2025, millions of workers still earn lower wages simply because they're earning tips and a sub-minimum wage that makes it impossible for them, as you heard from my colleagues, to have one job. It means that they're working 2 jobs, and in some cases they're working 3 jobs, right? And so this is a moment where America has to ask itself, who do you care most about? Who is front and center in your mind? If you care about our children, if you care about our communities, then we have to have one fair wage. One fair wage. And it is exactly why I'm here with you today. And look, I do brag, because in Chicago, we passed the one fair wage with all your help. And one of my local electives is one of the lead sponsors. So Jesse Fuentes, a shout out to you. And I know we're working to make sure that it happens in Illinois, and Deborah Lane is going to do everything possible so that it happens in Illinois. So let me end by saying this to you. One fair wage has to be the minimum work we do in this place. We need fair wages, and we need to make sure that those fair wages are not just, some kind of wage that people are able to survive on. We need living wages for people to be able to live on. And we can make that possible for the American people in this place. And it requires us to see our restaurant workers, our nail salon employees, our hotel staff, and everyone else nothing less than to be deserving of a fair pay for their hard work. So let's pass one fair wage now. So let me introduce to you my colleague, LaMonica MacGyver from New Jersey.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try to be quick because I know we're on a time limit, but as mentioned, I'm Congresswoman LaMonica MacGyver. I represent New Jersey's fine 10th Congressional District, and definitely I'm excited to sign on to this and be supportive. I want to just give kudos to Rep. Horsford for all of the work that he's put into this and the entire Nevada delegation on this. Under current regulations, tipped employees can make as little as $2.13 an hour. Let me say that again. In 2025, they can make $2.13 an hour, and their tips are subject to high taxes. In 2025, we should not be having this conversation. It should not have been happening 10 years ago. Our TIPS Act allows service employees to earn a federal minimum wage and cuts the tax on their tips. Tipped employees who are often providing our most necessary services deserve the financial security of a federal minimum wage and should not have their wages tied to the unpredictability of the tip culture. Let me tell you, there are people that work in the service industry that rely on tips that are Democrats, Republicans, independents, or maybe not even anything. And we should be fighting across the aisle to make sure that we pass the TIPS Act. So I'm proud to support this, and let's go out here and do what we can to make sure people don't have to survive to do the basis of paying their rent, paying their mortgage, and getting food on their table and having affordable health insurance. We have to fight hard, not because, it's some gift, but because it's just. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Congressmember. Thank you. We forgot to mention that we are here today because today is 2/13, which is not only the day before Valentine's, the highest grossing day in the industry, but our day annually to recognize, remember, commemorate the generations of women of color, people, men, everybody who've been working in restaurants and other tipped occupations for $2.13 an hour for way too long. Do you know it has been frozen at $2.13 for over 30 years? Since 1991. Long overdue. So you have to hear directly from people who are experiencing living on a sub-minimum wage every day of their lives. We're going to start with Malika Henderson, a tipped worker in New York. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Malika Henderson. I am a bartender from New York City, and I'm here to represent my colleagues in the hospitality industry. We are subjected to long hours, sometimes without breaks. We are subjected to abuses by customers who will put us through the ringer just to earn an extra dollar or two. We deserve one fair wage, and we deserve it now.
That's right.
Too many of us are struggling to pay our bills. We have to go through numerous steps to rent apartments because $2.13 doesn't reflect with a pay stub.
That's right.
We have to struggle and fight and just do so much just to earn a living, and that should not happen into 2025. We deserve to earn a livable wage for the hard work we do. We work 12 to 15 hours or more hours a day sometimes without proper breaks on occasion. We have to deal with abuses from our bosses and restaurant owners, and it's not fair. Everyone deserves to be able to pay their bills and support their families and feed their children. Hospitality workers are no different. So we implore you to support this bill, support the workers that support you. Like she said, Valentine's Day is one of the busiest days of the year for our hospitality workers, our restaurant workers, our bartenders. We make sure that you enjoy your experience and you have a good time. I think we deserve to get paid for that professionalism that we are able to deliver on those occasions. So please support the bill, support the workers that support you, and support one fair wage. We deserve one fair wage, and we deserve it now. Thank you.
And also we have Khadijah Sharif from Maryland, where the sub minimum wage is just $3.63 an hour.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Khadijah Sharif, and I've worked as a server here in Maryland for 5 years. I stand before you today, not just as a worker, but as someone who, like so many others, has struggled to make ends meet in an industry where we're asked to survive on crumbs. We, the servers, the workers of United States, are fighting an uphill battle. Our wages are simply not enough to cover the basic needs of life. For years, I made just $3.63 an hour, a wage that is not only shameful, but unsustainable.
That's right.
Some may not realize how low this wage is. And even fewer understand that the tips we depend on often do not reflect the quality of the service we provide. In fact, those tips are completely dependent on the whims of the customers who walk through the doors.
That's right.
The same customers who on any given day can decide that a bad experience, even if it has nothing to do with us, can take away from our already limited earnings. It is already difficult enough for young adults like myself trying to pay our way into adulthood. We're trying to find jobs that can cover basic expenses. Rent is high, gas is expensive, and health bills are only going up. Our livelihoods, our futures, should not be based on the opinions of someone who may have had a bad day. That is not a way to live. That is not a way to build a future. While I am fortunate enough to work at a restaurant that has made the decision to pay me full minimum wage plus tips on top, I know this is not the case for everyone. I've been on both sides, and I can tell you, restaurants can thrive while paying their customers minimum wage, their servers minimum wage. Customers still tip, just as they always have. But now, I don't have to rely on a customer's mood to survive.
That's right.
It is not just about fairness, it's about survival. We can't afford to wait any longer for a change that will allow us to live with some security, some peace of mind. The time to act is now. If restaurants can thrive with fair wages, so can all of us. I ask you guys to stand with us today. Stand with the servers, the workers who are trying to build a future despite being held back by a system that benefits from their struggles. Let's make sure that we are paid what we deserve, a fair wage for a fair day's work. Thank you.
Well, again, I want to commend Saru and One Fair Wage, all the workers. Thank you for sharing your voice and your perspective. Now the work begins. We're going to demand Republicans join with us. They claim they want to eliminate the tax on tips. This is the bill to do it because it also eliminates the sub-minimum wage. Donald Trump's concept of a plan does not do that. This is the only bill that does. So sign on to our bill if you really stand with workers. If not, get out of the way and let us govern. With that, I'll take one question. Great, I'm going to vote.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.